Hello lads, and welcome back to another beginner's guide, and this time I'm going to show you around the tech tree. So I'm here on the main account, and to get into your tech tree, you can see my crews are looking a little different than yours probably if you're a new player. To get into the tech tree, hit that research panel. The blue ones here are regular tech tree that you can research and unlock with silver lions. The gold ones over here either cost golden eagles or, as in the case, let's find something I haven't bought yet, as in the case of the P47M First RE here, it's part of a bundle, so you can only buy this on the Gaijin store webpage or through the link in the shop. And before getting into any of what these premium vehicles are, I'll just tell you simply they earn double rewards, that's Silver Lions and RP, when compared with their regular tech tree counterparts, and they can be special vehicles or just a copy of something else that's in the game, and they cost real money. If you plan to, well, let's put it this way, save your Golden Eagles for now and find out what you like to play, and then take a look at this again. And any one of these vehicles you can take out for a test flight. So feel free to try them out. That's aircraft or tanks, and you can test drive, test fly, and see how they perform and decide if they're to your liking. Now, when it comes to the regular tech tree, you can only test drive things that you're one stage away from unlocking. So this M26 I could test drive, but the M46 or the M47, even the M60 Rise P, I will not be able to test drive. However, I could test drive the T95 E1. So that can be helpful to allow you to make smart decisions about what you would like to start unlocking next. And as you can see, I've unlocked a few things in the American tree. Now, let's say we want to look at another nation. Down here are the tabs for different nations, and you can see the flag for Germany, USSR, Britain, Japan, Italy, and France. Italy doesn't have tanks yet to speak of, but they'll come eventually. Let's take a look at the USSR tree. As you can see, a lot of these have been unlocked, but I have a few more vehicles that I haven't researched yet. And what's this here? See how this tab has two tanks in it? If you click on it, it opens up, and there's two vehicles in this line. That's called a tabbed folder on the tech tree. You only have to research the first one, and if you choose not to research the second one in the tab, you can still move on to the next vehicle in the tech tree. Does that make sense? Since we're in the tech tree, let's go back to America and take a look at ammo types. Starting out the M2A4, go into modifications, and you start with the M74 shot as standard. It's a regular AP shell. It punches through the armor and causes spalling inside the enemy vehicle. The next shot is an armor-piercing capped shell, and this shell is designed to punch through angled armor more effectively and to cause a greater post-penetration effect once it punches through the armor. But in the case of the M51 shot, I would recommend the M74 over it because M74 has better AP qualities, as you can see down there under armor penetration at distances. See, at 500 meters it goes through 59, and the M51 goes through 58 at 500 meters. But if you look at, say, 2,000 meters, the M58 has 37, and the M74 quickly drops off to only 22. So that brings us to the advantage of capped shells, or ballistic capped shells. At longer ranges, they lose penetration more slowly. In other words, they fly through the air more easily. Make sense? Let's take a look at another vehicle with a more complicated armament. Let's go with the M4. Actually, let's go with the M4A2. So you have your regular M72 AP solid shot. You also have high explosive, which detonates on contact with enemy armor, and then the fragments have a chance of passing through thin armor, but they're in general not very effective. As you see, 10 millimeters at all ranges, any kind of armored vehicle will be able to resist that for the most part. M61 shot, however, is a bit different. This is your first armor-piercing high explosive round. In fact, it's an armor-piercing capped, ballistic-capped shell. What does that mean? Well, it has a ballistic cap over the round, which helps it to fly through the air. And under the ballistic cap, it has an armor-piercing cap, which helps it to punch through armor. And after it punches through the armor, it explodes via the high explosive charge inside, which is 65 grams of XPD, whatever that means. It has 63.7 equivalent TNT mass. That's not bad. It's pretty good. Once you get up to around 100 grams of TNT, you're getting into good one-shot kill potential when it comes to high explosive filler. This is the best ammo type in the game because all you have to do is get through the armor and then it causes a burst of damage inside with the potential to wipe out everything inside the enemy tank. Good AP qualities, good long-range qualities comparatively, and a fantastic post-penetration damaging effect. Next ammo type is composite rigid shell. The armor-piercing composite rigid, tongue twister, APCR is trash for the most part. You look at these armor-piercing qualities and you're like, wow, this is awesome. 143 millimeters of armor piercing? You'll be very, very lucky to ever achieve that. Reason is, if you look at the distance/angle of attack chart under armor penetration, when you start encountering only 30 degrees of impact angle, that's the round hits the enemy armor at less than like a 50% slope. In other words, if you had a flat plate of armor and they turn 45 degrees to you, they're already beyond where it says here, where you would be getting, let's say, 105 millimeters of equivalent pen, and that starts being noticeably less effective at punching through armor, to the point where if they're down to 60 degrees of angle, or in other words, if their armor is sloped at 30 degrees, or if they've turned 60 degrees away from you with flat armor, it's kind of hard to translate, but you'll get a feel for it. At that kind of an angle, the round does almost nothing. In fact, APCR performs below these stats that you see represented here for angled armor, and once it does punch through, it has almost no spalling, unlike standard AP, and it has no explosive filler. You're basically firing a laser beam at the enemy vehicle, and it performs even worse than I'm describing it. It's very disappointing, especially for a 75mm gun. You're a lot better off just trying to aim for a spot you can punch through with your AP-HE. Let's talk more about ammo types. Later on, you'll encounter large caliber AP as fired through the T-34, and that has massive damaging effect. Watch a few videos on the T-34 Heavy. The thing is a blast. But let's look at another ammo type by using the M103. M103 comes with high explosive anti-tank fin stabilized rounds. Now, earlier in the tree, sorry, I'm just standing up a little bit. Earlier in the tree, you'll encounter heat rounds, and heat for the most part is not all that effective, but if it's the only thing that can punch through armor, it's still better than APCR. However, Heat FS is an upgraded form of heat that commonly has higher penetration and better accuracy. For that reason, Heat FS, as in the M103, can be quite effective, and it has decent post-pen damage in most cases, although that can vary depending upon the specific round that you're talking about. However, as I mentioned before, the M103 also comes with a high caliber AP round, and I've used this to great effect. It tends to just burst everything inside the enemy tank. It's like a shotgun once it goes through the armor. So if you have enough penetration with your regular AP rounds, I would recommend that over Heat FS even. But let's take a look at another vehicle, the Magach 3. This is a premium vehicle, but it's the same gun as on the American M60. And another thing about premium vehicles is they come with every module unlocked at the start, except for the starter premiums. And those, you unlock them so fast it doesn't matter. Magach 3 has 2 ammo types I haven't talked about yet, even 3. So there's armor-piercing discarding Sabo. This is like an improved version of APCR with similar strengths and weaknesses, but better performance against angled armor, and it tends to fly at a very high velocity, giving it a flatter flight trajectory, which means it's easier to hit targets at ranges where you're not sure just how far away something is. Aim in generally the right direction, and this will be a lot more likely to hit than this. This is high explosive squash head, which is, again, basically a standard improvement over regular high explosive. You saw the high explosive round for the Sherman had 10 millimeters of penetration. This one has 127 millimeters of penetration up to a 60-degree angle, which is fairly highly sloped armor, yet it is an angle that you'll encounter fairly commonly at this tier with Japanese and Soviet medium tanks for the most part. And then your penetration falls down to 100 millimeters, which is right on the line of being useful. Hesh, as I said, functions much like standard high explosive, except that the spalling effect that it has when it compromises the enemy armor is a bit different, but for the most part you can treat it like an upgraded high explosive round. Heat FS and a smoke round. Many tanks in the game come with a smoke round now, and it's a shell that you can load into the main gun that generally has a lower flight velocity than other rounds that the tank fires. Here you can see under muzzle velocity for the Heat FS, it flies at 1173 meters per second, which is a decent speed. The APDS flies at 1478, and the smoke round flies at 730. So it's a lower velocity round. It does almost no damage to a target hit, even though this one does have 50 grams of explosive mass. However, it creates an immediate smoke screen in the area of its impact that can cover you, or it can cover your attack route. It's basically as effective as your tactical awareness and your use of the shell can be. So it's useful to carry a few of those. However, since we're talking about smoke, there's also another type of smoke round, and for that, let's look at the M551. Many tanks have smoke screen modules. In the case of the M551 Sheridan and many others, even some early British tanks, you will have smoke grenades mounted on the vehicle, and these launch when you press the appropriate key. It's standardly bound to G, and these are a great way to get out of a sticky situation, or to cover an advance, or to cover a retreat. You can even use these to cover an ally, but don't use these for evil. Use these for good. I know what you're thinking. Alright, that just about covers it for some of the basic modules and offensive capabilities of vehicles in the game, talking of course about ground forces. And then when you get into aircraft, they have a similar sheet here, and you can choose the types of ammunition belts you're using for your defensive guns and your offensive guns. And in general, for cannons, you want things with high explosive rounds, like high explosive incendiary or armor-piercing high explosive in some cases, or standard high explosive, as you often see in the Japanese 20 mils. For cannons, you want high explosive against other planes, and you want armor-piercing rounds when you need to punch through a certain amount of armor. Often bombers will have armored segments over critical components such as engines and fuel tanks, and armor-piercing or API, armor-piercing incendiary rounds, perform better against those than standard high explosive. And other times you just want to snipe the enemy pilot, and armor-piercing rounds are good for that. Also, AP can be used against ground targets much more effectively. As you see, the API M8 armor-piercing incendiary bullets and the omni-purpose rounds for this PV2D harpoon can go through 16 millimeters of armor at 500 meters. Now, why would I quote that figure instead of the figure for 10 meters? How often in an airplane are you 10 meters from an enemy tank? And then how often do you survive that encounter? So, fire your shots outside of 500 meters, pull away, live to derp another day. Because your aircraft, if it's the right kind of aircraft, such as a bomber or a ground striker, even some heavy fighters or naval fighters, or American anything, can carry rockets and bombs. And these can be found under your secondary weapons, and often need to be unlocked, as you see here. Again, this is a premium vehicle, it's got everything unlocked, but the PV2D harpoon has just about every type of armament, so it's a great one to show things off with. Now you see this drop-down list, and you might be intimidated by all these choices, but it's actually rather simple. If it's only bombs, it's bombs. If there's rockets and bombs in the picture, well, you guessed it. And then rockets, and then gun pods. In the case of the PV2D harpoon, it can carry one type of gun pod, dual 50 cals, for a total of 4 50 cal guns on 2 mounts. Make sense? Good. There are different kinds of rockets, there are different kinds of bombs in the game, but basically, when it comes to rockets or bombs, you want the most explosive mass you can get. So if you look at this selection, the PV2D can carry 2 Tiny Tim rockets that have 63.5 kilograms of high explosive filler. Again, we talked about how 100 grams of high explosive filler is good if you can punch through the armor. 63.5 is like 635 times that much. So you'd think that it would be able to just wipe an enemy vehicle off the map, but high explosive isn't quite as effective as you'd want it to be. However, with a direct hit with a Tiny Tim, you're most likely to one-shot most enemy tanks. Each of our rockets, however, only carry 3.4 kilograms of high explosive, and they're exponentially less powerful than their Tiny Tim counterpart, but a lot higher velocity, as the name would imply, and these can one-shot enemy fighters and bombers, and can seriously inconvenience enemy ground targets under the right circumstances. Make sense? Then you get into things like rockets and bombs. It's good then to use your rockets at range to try and track or immobilize an enemy vehicle, and then drop a bomb right on his head, and watch him helplessly squirm until that 1,000-pound bomb explodes. In general, for, say, American aircraft, a 1,000-pound bomb can pretty much wipe out anything if it lands reasonably close to them. And by reasonably close, I mean in the area of 2 to 3 meters. You have to be pretty close, for the most part. Exceptions apply to this rule. Bombs don't do nearly the amount of damage that they used to do, but that's the world we live in, and you're going to become such a good pilot that it won't be a problem. 100-pound bombs can destroy enemy vehicles if you get a direct hit or if they drive over the top of them. And 500-pound bombs are reasonably reliable in some circumstances. You get the idea? The more boom you have, the less accuracy you have to have, the thicker armor you can punch through with your bombs, and you'll get a feel for this as you practice it. Basically, you want to carry the biggest bombs you can in most circumstances. However, check out the changes to specs section of this data sheet. It reduces the max speed of your airplane, the climb rate, and it increases your turn time. That is the time it takes for you to turn. In other words, you're going to be flying a lot slower, you're going to be more lumbering, and you're not going to be able to pull the same maneuvers with the same efficiency that you can without that heavy load. So when it comes to rockets and bombs, be aware of that. Anyway guys, that's a quick rundown of modules on the vehicles, and let me just show you real quick what it's like when you're researching a vehicle. If I can get to something that I'm still researching, here we go. M1 Abrams. As you can see, I have parts and FPE unlocked. I've unlocked adjustment of fire, and I'm working on smoke grenade to unlock the next level of improvements. Always go for parts and FPE. What you go for outside of that is up to you. You'll find out what you're lacking the most as you play the vehicle. In the case of the Abrams, I really was missing on the accuracy because its gun is very high velocity and it faces some really tough vehicles at long ranges, and you need to be able to aim for those small weak spots, so adjustment of fire, improving accuracy was essential. Smoke rounds, not so much, but smoke grenades can be very, very helpful. A suspension, brake system, tracks, filters, transmission, and engine all help with your movement, as it says, mobility. And then crew replenishment is more helpful in arcade than it is in RB. It can give you back one guy. In the case of RB, when you're in a cap circle that your team owns, or in the case of arcade, whenever you need one. ESS is a smoke system that uses your engine. Basically, you create a cloud of smoke at the location of your vehicle as you're moving, and it lasts for a duration of time. Very helpful. Elevation mechanism is another accuracy upgrade and also helps you to lift and lower the cannon. Artillery support is for medium tanks, and it is exactly what it sounds like. You'll be able to use artillery in the match. There can be other upgrades, including different types of ammunition, and when you want to look at potential ammunition for your vehicle, just go here under your gun and look at what you have. There's the regular APDS round, and there's the upgraded APDS round. In this case, it's an APFS DS round, fin stabilized, and like the Heat FS, it's a straight upgrade over standard APDS. Make sense? Good. Anyway guys, this seems like a good place to wrap up this guide. I know I droned on a little bit, but hopefully that gives you a handle on what the tech tree is all about. You will learn more things as you research vehicles, and just be sure to go for FPE and parts as soon as you can. It'll really help you out. Guys, catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.